Hey everyone, welcome to Saturday Night Popcorn. This is Jason.
And this is Kai, and we have another great discussion for you today. The movie of the day is The Flash from 2023. Fairly new. It's not the TV show, it's the movie that came out in theaters a few months back. So, spoiler warning, then we want to give a brief description of the movie. The Flash is a superhero movie that explores the consequences of altering the past. Barry Allen, who's the Flash, is a forensic scientist who can move at super speed. He decides to use his power to travel back in time and save his mother from being murdered. However, this creates a ripple effect that changes the course of history and creates a new reality where the world is under the threat of General Zod, a ruthless alien warlord. Barry must team up with Supergirl, a young Kryptonian who escapes Zod's tyranny, and Batman, a dark and older version of the Cape Crusader from another timeline, to restore the balance of the multiverse and stop Zod from destroying everything.
Yeah. I think it kind of like gives you an understanding that there's a lot going on in this movie.
There is. But it seems like, it feels like Hollywood, they have a group chat or they just call each other. It's like, hey, we're doing multiverse movies now. Because this year and last year, it was multiverse movies like crazy.
Yeah, I think it needs to be done correctly. So then it's like you're not sitting there. You're like, what is going on, and what's all this, and what is he doing? Why is Michael Caine's or what's his name?
Keaton?
I forget. Michael Keaton. I kept calling him Michael Caine last night.
That's still my favorite Batman. Him.
That's what Patty said. Patty says she loved him the most, and actually we kind of wanted to watch a Batman movie afterwards. Like
as you should.
to do
the
like
Tim
a
Burton
palate
Batman
cleanser.
movies. Oh, yeah. I probably
Did you get the
it.
other Tim Burton reference in the
the Nick
movie?
Cage?
Yeah.
So the funny thing, so I told you, but now we're recording, I had already seen this. I'd seen this in theaters when it came out because I try to watch almost every movie that comes out in theaters that I feel is interesting. I know you don't. But I had watched this in theaters, so I'd already seen it. But when that moment came on, like somebody legitimately clapped. And I was looking like, okay, it's cool that they did it, but it's not that serious.
And even like Nick Cage and probably Tim Burton would be like, it wasn't that serious back then either.
Yeah. Like we thought it was cool, but we're happy we didn't go along with that.
Yeah. Like he looks fine in it, but like you can tell he looks like his character from Con Air. Just
with the hair, Superman, just grizzled. Just grizzled. And you're like, come on,
he crashed the plane in Con Air, and then he walked off and became a Kryptonian, and be like, all right, that's the story.
He just gets superpowers somehow.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. I think Christopher Nolan messed DC up.
Tainted.
In like the best way possible. Like after making The Dark Knight, DC hasn't really made any great movies since.
DC in general, yeah, DC, this whole DC universe that they're creating is like
it's Zack Snyder's brainchild.
Many steps below from Christopher Nolan's brainchild of like the Dark Knight trilogy, and then also what's going on with the Joker and stuff. And so you see where kind of adding some grittiness to these DC characters is beneficial.
Yes.
And their own personality, because it's like Batman is someone that just like wanders around in the night and stuff and is grizzled and all this stuff. And I want to see what James Gunn does, because he's pretty much just like done with all this stuff. Like they are releasing these things because they made them and they have to figure out a way to make money off of them.
They should just release Batgirl too. Stop holding that movie hostage.
So do they have that movie? And it's the character that we saw inside of this. No.
Batgirl,
that yes, that one. That's the one that they canceled, right?
Yeah, the one that was like 90 million. They were like, we'll keep this.
I know. I think it's like if you have it, it's like who cares? Like they're like releasing Aquaman 2 or whatever, and it's like they're probably thinking like this is gonna be trash.
A tank. That thing is gonna tank.
Yeah. I think the issue is that you have these movie production companies, say Warner Brothers in this, or DC in this case, and they want to pump them out,
Mm-hmm.
and they were kind of on their back foot because of Marvel, and so they wanted to catch up and stuff. So they add in like all of these kind of like big, kind of like set pieces and stuff into these movies, where the source material for this movie, The Flash,
Mm-hmm.
is a big story,
Oh, they had
but
to
it is
condense
kind
it.
of self-contained to The Flash,
Mm-hmm.
and in that story is Arthur Wayne, his dad,
Hmm.
and so I think it's Arthur Wayne, but so it's like it's almost self-contained. You have those two characters that you're following within the comic book in
Yeah.
the story. Where this, it's like you almost kind of get lost. It's like, all right, now
Oh
we're
yeah.
seeing Supergirl, now we're seeing this person, now we're seeing that, and you almost forget like where Barry Barry Allen, and there's
Barry
two
Allen
of
is,
them.
and there's multiple Barry Allens. Well, three,
Yeah,
because the third one
yeah,
you're just like,
right.
what?
I
Yeah,
don't
it
know. It
was.
it gets convoluted.
Yeah, there was. I think I had more moments where I was like, why would they? Why would they do this? Like, I thought it was. I thought it was kind of funny, but kind of corny when Alfred called Barry, and he was like, "Hey, I need you to go help this hospital." And then Barry has
Hmm.
to like eat a burrito and eat chocolate bars, and then start saving babies. And when I watched it in theaters, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." But then watching it a second time, I was like, "Yeah, this they could have left without this. I could have done without this. This was a waste."
Or kind of like meet halfway. It's almost like they got to a limit and they're like, all right, let's just push past that
Yeah,
and make it more corny. Like it
yeah,
was funny and then it switches to that corniness and it's like, all right, that's kind of difficult. And even the interactions between young Barry and the Barry that we know from the universe that
hmm
we've been following, they're almost kind of corny and they're you get some like aspects of like, oh, that's kind of funny.
yeah.
That was pretty funny, and that's whatever and stuff. And then it switches over back to like them having this like corny like best friend kind of like
Banter.
relationship.
Yeah, like I enjoyed when the Barry we know gets his powers back. Like they're with Michael
Mm-hmm.
Keaton, they're in the Batcave, and young Barry is still trying to figure out his powers, but older Barry or our Barry had lost his powers. He gets them back. They makes or Barry makes young Barry makes his suit, and they have an interaction about their suits. That was kind of funny, and then it kind of just went
Yeah, where like his looks
downhill.
janky and everything, and he's like, I have
Yeah,
to give you the ring back and everything.
yeah. I enjoyed that
Yeah,
interaction, that conversation. But
you
there were
see
yeah,
that
too many
there's like
moments.
little shining points.
Hmm
There's like little shining points in this movie where it's like, all right, like okay, someone is making sense in this. But then there's like this grand scale where it's like it's a Justice League event that's going on with General
Yes.
Zod, and then it's just the Flash trying to figure it out. Which it does happen at the end of the comic book, where it's like this like whole thing, but the Flash really just needs to figure out how to get back to his timeline and stuff, and
hmm
that's the thing, and the whole big bad is a whole different person and stuff. If I'm
Yeah, which is
understanding, if I'm
something
remembering correctly,
that they went
like
back. Like they did that in this film, but they just did it in a roundabout way.
yeah. So like the whole like him getting his powers back from like with Bruce or the Wayne kind of helping him, that's in the
Hmm
comic book. But
Okay.
he does kind of like fry himself and everything and like he almost dies. Because like he
Yeah, he
like
almost died in this too.
burns himself and everything. And then but yeah, like it's very interesting. I want to focus on like the what do you think is like like we kind of already touched on some positives, a
Hmm
little bit of positives, but what do you think is like the most or like what stands out as like all right, this is like a defining quality for this movie before it drops off.
I think so. Everybody that has seen this movie talks about how bad the CGI is. I think the suits, the CGI for all the characters' suits were great. Like seeing Barry's suit light up before he starts running, seeing Kara, Supergirl, seeing her suit and the reminiscence of Superman's Man of Steel suit, and
Mm-hmm.
then even Keaton's suit. Like the fact that they brought that back from like the '90s Batman films. So I like
Yeah,
that aspect.
me too. I think everyone looked amazing. Even the second Barry's like janky suit that he makes with
Yeah.
with Batman stuff. It's like that looks good and everything. And it's like I wonder, like, there's probably some CGI to that, but that's probably a practical suit that they put on.
Most likely.
So that's why it probably looks a little better than some of the CGI that you see throughout this movie. And like it kind of to bounce off like your thought about like his like power kind of generating through his
Hmm.
suit. Like I'm actually very surprised of like how well they can visualize Barry's like interaction with the Speed Force,
Oh yeah.
where it's what does it look like for him, and it's like everything kind of slows down, and then he can kind of like maneuver around everything. It gets corny and bad
Yeah.
when he starts messing around with the babies and stuff and like all that stuff. But when he's in the Speed Force, like when he like finally transitions into like he's like stumbling through time, I think that's like a cool representation of like what he would experience. Like
Hmm.
as he's like, oh crap, like I'm actually running fast enough that I'm going through time and stuff, or
Yeah.
I'm able to kind of like go into this time bubble. And I think that's sort of where they caught that well. Um, but then he just falls off a cliff and everything, and then because like you see, once he gets into that little time bubble,
Oh, the CGI just goes
everyone everyone else
downhill.
around him looks like a fucking like I don't know what it looks like Pixar characters or
It looks
something.
like Mid Journey when it first started. It's like 10 fingers instead of 5 on each hand. Like just craziness.
And I can't remember. Do you remember? I think there was someone arguing that there was possibly some AI generation in this movie.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like some
Me
of those
either.
images look like some bad Mid Journey images.
Yeah, right. And so there is some defining qualities. Actually, Patty next to me watching the movie, she actually
Hmm.
enjoyed the story.
Okay.
And so she was like, I like stepping away from the CGI and all that
Hmm.
stuff, and like how she even thought like Barry's interaction with his own self was like kind of corny and stuff, and like
Yeah.
a little slapstick comedy and stuff. But she actually enjoyed the story of like him trying to like connect with his mom that died and stuff, and who doesn't enjoy that and stuff,
Hmm.
and so I think there is some defining qualities. It's just the execution of this movie.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, because I
there's a
did like
lot
that
of things.
also. I
Yeah.
did like him like, okay, I lost my mother, but now I have a way to get back to her. And him then dealing with the repercussions of going back in time because he was being selfish. Like I enjoyed all that part, like that portion of the film, but yeah, like you said, the execution. Oh, one thing I didn't touch on was Kara's powers. Like I enjoyed seeing Clark in Man of Steel figure out his powers, his flying abilities and everything. But seeing Kara when she first finds like, oh, where's Zod? She flies out there through cities and everything to go meet up with Zod. There's a moment where she like hits what is it? Oh, the sound barrier, like a freaking jet,
Hmm.
and you see the cloud, and I was like, oh, that's cool as hell.
Yeah. So there, yeah, like there is like some really like I remember in terms of Kara, there was a moment where she is taking Barry to go get struck by lightning, I think, and then
Oh,
they
and she
go
goes up
through
in
a
the
cloud.
clouds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it like the cloud puffs up and like it goes and she makes a trail behind it or in front of it. It's like there's some like actually some people that understood that like all right, this is a cool shot. Like it's a
Yes,
very like cinematic shot too because it's like wide and you just see Kara just kind of burst through the cloud.
the cloud.
That's a very beautiful shot and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it sucks because there's many other things that do not look good.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this film, they went back in time to basically Man of Steel. Man of Steel. Do
Mhm.
you think a lot of the Zod or some of the Zod uh, scenes were from when they filmed Man of Steel?
No, I heard that what's his name, Michael Shannon.
Hmm.
he did have to come back for this movie,
Okay.
and from what I remember reading is that Michael Shannon did not like working on this movie again,
Oh wow.
and so I wonder some of the shots. I think there are like some reuse because like the Marvel movie
Hmm.
does that where like when they in like the when they're doing the whole time theft thing that they're trying to steal all the stones in Infinity War
Hmm.
or Endgame, they're reusing some shots,
Yeah.
but then it's like they're at different angles. So then did they have to come back in and do those again, or
Yeah.
so there's got to be some like production wizardry of like figuring that out, but I think there's some extra shots with Michael Shannon that he had to be there and stuff and like film these things.
That sucks.
Yeah,
That
and
sucks.
I know like you kind of do all that stuff and then you just like, all right, like do I have to redo these shots, but then like
Yeah.
face that way?
I have to turn my head just a little bit so I'm looking in that direction instead of the
Right?
other. Like, you guys didn't get this when we made the first film? Like, come on.
Yeah, it seems like a pain, like just like a waste of time and everything.
Yeah.
Where like I don't know, and wondering whether or not like all the other people like it sucks because like it. Patty read that this is the person that played Kara. This
Hmm.
is her film debut and everything.
Oh, Sasha?
Yeah, so it sucks because like you have someone that like actually wants to be a
Legitimate
prominent
actor.
star
Hmm.
and wants to like act in movies and stuff, and then they get this role like I'm gonna be
That's a
Supergirl and
huge
stuff.
role. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you almost kind of like what do you do? It's like well like I like you kind of just put it like where I like you almost kind of have to be selfish where it's like I want to do well for myself in this
Hmm.
movie even though everything else around it
Is
is
a
a
mess.
dumpster fire. I don't know.
I think she did her thing though. Like, I enjoyed watching her as Supergirl.
Yeah, I think so. I think she was a little bit too brooding and everything. I was like, I think she was like a little bit too much like early Batman and everything, like the
Mm,
whole like deep voice all the time. But other than that, I think like in terms of like how she kind of interacted with like Zod and fought Zod and
yeah.
everything, and how she was like a scared vicious dog at the beginning where she was like I have no clue what the hell is going on and
Yeah.
like
Like, where am I?
everyone I've been punished by these people that are humans and
Yeah.
then you're telling me you're a human and then what are you gonna do?
Like,
And
who am
then
I
I'm like
supposed to
this like
trust?
this god that can kill anybody so what am
Hmm.
I gonna
Do I
do?
hold back or do I just murder all of you? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think no matter what, there is some good parts of this movie,
Yeah.
but then there's the shitty parts,
Yeah. There was a
and
lot of those.
sadly one of them is that it's too long, and then so those shitty parts are way too long too.
But I'm wondering, like, because people, you have to read, like, someone has to read the script, and then you have to storyboard this. Like, you have to storyboard your film. Like, somebody should have been like, "Hey, let's cut this out. Let's put this as a deleted scene. That's not necessary for to keep the pace of the film." So I'm just wondering where things fell off. Like, was there too much input from the production company? Was the story just because they had great source material, so the story should have been great. So I just don't understand where the hangup was. It seems like they were probably thrown all the money they would ever need for this film, but it just fell short.
And Patty, she was like, "Oh, maybe in your discussion tomorrow, like try to remember that this is a pandemic film technically. Like this was a film done,
Yeah,
but
done in
you
22.
release it in 2023.
Yeah,
The pandemic's not over. It's not like like whatever we're dealing with went away like
yeah,
magically and everything. Like we still deal with it now. But I think this movie was like half done by like 2020, I think. And then
uh,
everything went to hell.
yeah,
And then they had to figure out what to do. And I think that's where like the CGI comes in and like everyone's like rushing to put everything together and stuff. And I don't know. It's I guess you do have to remember that it is a pandemic film, but
No, but we
this
got
is like
some
a
great movie. Like that makes a lot of sense. But we also did get a lot of great movies during that time
yeah.
because they were able to figure out, okay, hey, because we X and Pearl both came out during the pandemic and were filmed in the pandemic
They filmed those
and
back to back.
back to back, and it's
Totally
like,
different looks and styles.
yeah, and both great movies, like both hour and a half great movies, but it seems like some production companies were able to figure out, like, hey, we'll just put these people in a bubble, we'll knock this movie out, CGI can be done whenever. And in my mind, that's how it should have went. Like, okay, hey, we have the script, we have this movie, we have all the actors, let's lock them down in whatever area we're filming for however many months, and then we'll send over everything over to CGI to get that done, and so they have a duration of time. But obviously, I'm not the person that runs that, so I had no say so.
And then looking up the director.
Mm-hmm.
The director. I don't know if you saw their past films. Like the past films that they directed were Mama, and then the two remakes of the It
Oh,
franchise or the It
yeah.
story. So it
Weren't
seems
those
like
all
they have a
good?
horror aspect in their background.
Mm-hmm.
So does that seem like a very like I know you want to give people like opportunities to do these big films and stuff, and maybe he wanted to do a big film, like
Yeah.
a major blockbuster and stuff. But does that show making like a horror movie? Does that show that you can make a superhero movie? And does I don't know his like I'm wondering if whether or not his background made him kind of like convolute everything. Like he kind of like went like all over the place.
I maybe, but I also can see because it like Pennywise is an alien, so I can see that kind of playing into the making of this because he has to utilize real people and then an alien that has somewhat superpowers. So I think it might have played well for him or the director.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot. I think there it's probably like that weird like Spider-Man like meme, like everyone's pointing fingers at
Hmm.
themselves or like each other and stuff, and like DC is like we're not the ones.
Yeah, it's not us. Like we gave you the money, you figure it out. But yeah, I
Well, we
think
we
we had.
see
Uh,
with like this is the 13th installment of the DC universe that
Yeesh.
as we saw, where I think it's just there's too much going on at the same time. You can't
Yeah.
and and technically this is the first feature film of the Flash within
Hmm.
these installments too. So I don't know. There was a lot.
I think we had talked about it when we watched Endgame. I think DC just needs to allow directors and writers to make standalone films. Like when they have involvement in it, it seems like you said, things get convoluted because the standalone films, the Dark Knights, the Batman, the Joker, those have all been great. But anything related to the DCU just seems like the production company has way too much say in what is put on the screen, and we get a mess. I watched Blue Beetle the other day, and I was
Uh,
like, the characters are cool, like the characters are interesting, but this movie just
I
doesn't
was
come
bummed
across
out by
very
that. I
well.
was like, man, how do you mess like why mess up the one that's like all the Hispanic people?
Yeah, I was excited for it. I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool. And then yeah, we got that. I'm just happy Marvel did Black Panther, so I got a good black film.
See, there you go.
I'm happy about that. Because I know they would mess up a cyborg. I know DC would mess up a cyborg film, so I'm not looking
Cyborg
forward to that.
film, I
Yeah.
know, man. Like, look at that. But I don't know. There's a lot going on with this movie. I think, yeah, like you said, like having standalone film movies that are more self-contained, because
Hmm.
like even though Batman's the Dark Knight trilogy looked and felt gigantic,
Yeah.
and that's just Christopher Nolan's style. It's just like everything's like so overblown,
Hmm.
but you only stayed in this very like small scope of the Gotham city.
Yeah.
So like you weren't going all over the place in the world and like flying and all this stuff, like because Batman can't really do that. He stays in his own little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christopher Nolan figured out how to make that bubble gigantic
Yeah.
and still self-contained and stuff. And I think and a lot of these superheroes, a lot of people argue that like with these superheroes, like they make them into like these big prominent kind of universe superheroes, but in the comic books they're like these like small little characters that kind of like deal
Yeah.
with their own little corner of the world.
That's the truth.
Yeah, so I don't know, but what'd you end up rating this movie?
I forgot what my original rating was, but I ended up giving it a 2. I thought it's watchable. There's some good, like we had talked about, there's some good moments, but there's also some very bad moments. So I gave it a 2.
Yeah, I agree with you with the two. It's there are times where it's like, yeah, it's watchable and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The CGI is like hard to look past and everything,
Yeah.
but that's why like it's a solid 2. Like the story is not that bad. It's like it's not the worst movie in the world.
No.
And it was funny because like when I was watching the movie and like it ended, it had suggestions, and the Green Lantern film with Ryan Reynolds popped up, and I'm like, people are
Oh.
gonna look back at that movie and be like, that was not actually the worst movie.
Yeah, now that the Flash came out, that's the truth.
Yeah, now that the Flash came out,
Yeah.
some other ones, we ended up watching the
Black
Fantastic
Adam.
Four, the original one.
Ooh. Oh, okay. The one with Jessica Alba.
Yeah, the one with Jessica
And
Alba, and we
Captain
were
America.
like, this thing came out how many years before the Flash and has like the same CGI basically.
Yes. That's the
If not
craziest
better.
thing in the world. Yeah. It makes no sense. They're just overworking those CGI people.
I guess so, man. It's like they're just like, man, so much coffee and Red Bulls and stuff. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you recommend this movie to, if you do?
I would have to say someone into the superhero films and TV shows. I think they would find some glimmer of hope in this. Like they would, the story, like we said, the story's not bad, and I think for me, I just watch them because I've seen all the rest of the superhero films, so I'm like, I just
Yeah.
have to keep up with it. There's probably other people like that, so they might as well watch it if they haven't already. I wouldn't go out of my way to tell somebody, hey, you have to watch The Flash, unless they're doing a bad movie month, like, or a bad movie weekend.
Yeah. I agree with you. Where it's like it's almost like you have to like recommend it to people that like have sat through all of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, and for
You've already
us, it's
devoted
like
so
it's
much
almost
time.
like a
Yeah.
waste of time if we didn't watch this movie.
Yes.
And so, but if there's anybody out there that like read the Flashpoint Paradox, the comic book that this is based off of, you will be kind of disappointed. It's like just stick to the comic book, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's almost just that. Or like, did you watch the Flash TV show on WB and like enjoyed that a lot? Well,
Yeah.
maybe you'll enjoy this movie. I watched The Flash on WB and I like that one better than this. and that's like a teenager like
A teenage Barry, yeah, trying to figure his stuff
the
out.
most subdued like Flash you can make and everything. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a toss up for sure.
Yeah. All right, Kai, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thanks for joining us for another episode of Saturday Night Popcorn. I'm Kai.
And I'm Jason, and we'll be back next week for another one. And please let us know if you've seen this movie, if you enjoyed The Flash, if you did not like The Flash. Please let us know in the comments. And then please subscribe to Saturday Night Popcorn on YouTube and everywhere else you find podcasts.